How's your day going? I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for clicking on this reaction. My name is Edikun the Rock DJ. I'm a Kenyan rock DJ, professional rock DJ in Kenya for about 10 years. Played in clubs, concerts, TV, and radio. I saw this link in my comments. The title is Outpost Harry Korean War, the veterans, Greeks and Americans versus Chinese. Interesting recommendation. African schools don't teach about these types of wars. So if you're watching from Greece, thanks so much for being here. Make sure to smash like and subscribe for more Greek content. This is a blind reaction, so let's go. A little known story of the Korean War. Okay.
Our positions were overrun by a superior number of forces. By the time the artillery stopped, we raised our heads to see what was going on. They were in the trenches and were on top of us.
We had, before the Chinese got there, we'd been subjected to artillery fire for well over an hour. And it intensified, and then the Chinese were coming. And it, I think, was around 2 o'clock in the morning when they finally breached the trenches and got in.
We weren't expecting that they'd ever get in the trenches because I had defensive fire, just kind of a wall of steel clear around our position.
Lieutenant Brown, he was in a bunker, a heavy bunker, and he said, "Davis, you hold this hill with all cost, if that means your life."
They just kept coming. They just walked over the dead and right into the trench, right into the trenches. That's when the hand-to-hand comebacks occurred. You say, well, a lot of guys are leaving this earth tonight.
I thought.
You say, well, a lot of guys are leaving this earth tonight.
I thought.
I like that he didn't just say die, he just said leaving this earth tonight. Also, have you ever watched the movie Hacksaw Ridge? Have you ever watched the movie Hacksaw Ridge? The way they're explaining everything, I just remembered Hacksaw Ridge. If you've not watched Hacksaw Ridge, go watch Hacksaw Ridge. I recommend it to you. That movie, Hacksaw Ridge.
In the trenches. That's when the hand-to-hand comebacks occurred. You say, well, a lot of guys are leaving this earth tonight.
I thought that I was going to die. Be brave. Don't be a coward. Whatever's going to happen, be brave. Do your job. Don't be afraid. And that was going through my mind. Don't be afraid. And I was praying.
While I was going on that hill, I always was saying Psalm the 23rd. I always say that, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
It was like a slaughterhouse where there's exposed bone parts and body parts spread all over the top of the hill. You couldn't walk without walking on them.
When we learned that the Chinese were in the trenches and that we needed to do something drastic, we had artillery called in on ourselves.
We used to laugh about that, you know, if everything goes to...
The sound of his voice, the baritone of his voice.
pieces on you, you could always...
He has a very unique voice, in my opinion.
Call in fire on yourself, get it over with. And but I thought privately, could I do that? Could I call in fire on my own position and my own men? But, you know, I made that decision without even thinking twice.
And I could see the Chinese jumping across. About that time, a Chinaman crawled right above my head, and I saw him come over, and I was kneeling and had my carbine in my hand. I shoved the bayonet up, caught him in the neck, went right through his head. I flipped him over, pulled my bayonet out.
The trenches were filled up with American and Chinese soldiers. Some of them are still alive, hollering for help, and but we had to walk over them and keep going to clear the hill out.
That's the kind of warfare that an infantryman goes through, and it's hard to describe. Those things you never forget, and that's what makes the difference between an infantry battle and any other kind. And Harry, I think, was the essence of being an infantryman.
He was killed, Sergeant Hanna. He was killed at the bottom of the hill. A damn good soldier he was. A nice person. It shouldn't have ever happened to him. He was shot in the head. He was shot in the head. I still see that every day I see that. I was right behind him when he was shot. And we put a blanket over him. We took a rifle with a bayonet, stuck it behind him, put his helmet on it. And that's how we left him when we went off the hill. A blanket, a rifle, and a helmet.
This is your job. You were so
This reminds me so much of like as I said, in African schools we are not taught about these wars. So mostly you get to like have an idea of what they're describing through films. And I remember Saving Private Ryan. If you watch Saving Private Ryan, I heard that veterans who watch Saving Private Ryan, they just get like serious PTSD. So everything they're describing, I feel for them, I empathize.
soldier. And God will forgive you no matter what you do up on the hill.
Infantrymen have already spent their time in hell. When they die, they go straight to heaven.
The Chinese were coming down the trench to where our outpost bunker was, our command post. And from there inside, we were firing out the door to keep them out.
They threw a grenade in, and I could hear it sizzling, but
His voice, good Lord. It's like the first time I heard it, I didn't like register properly. But the more I listened to him, I'm like, you know, audiobooks. He'd be great. He's like what? He's like, he reminds me of like Morgan Freeman. His voice is so good.
so much junk on the floor, but then there's no way you could ever kick it back out. And when it went off, Richards and Markley dropped.
One of the concussion grenades knocked me out, and I was unconscious for quite a while.
Then he threw another grenade in, and this one knocked me down. And I fell partly on Markley, and of course he was unconscious, and Richards was unconscious, and a flashlight came through the door, and he looked Richards over, and then he looked Markley over, and I thought I'd play dead, so I took this bloody hand and wiped over my face, and but then, before he got to me, I was shaking like a leaf. I was so scared that I couldn't help but shake. And I thought, well, what am I going to do, because he'll know I'm still alive. About that time, Rich started coming to, and they were talking to one another. The wounded was talking to the guard, and so he got up and went over with his flashlight and looked at Rich and shot him. And pretty soon Markley started kind of moving around.
My throat was clogged up, and I tried to clear it, which caused me to make a little noise.
He started coughing, and so they came over and they rolled me kind of away from him a little ways and looked me all over. It just felt like that flashlight was burning my face. I didn't think I'd ever make it, and I didn't know, how I'd ever get out of it.
I felt that I was with a group that would take care of me, and I'm going to take care of them, and we would fight for each other.
The way they describe everything, it's so intense from their description.
And then we heard this roar and big cloud of dust, and here come a convoy driving across there. And it was the Greeks arriving at Outpost Harry. And when the truck pulled up nearest me, there was a man standing up against a cab playing a musical instrument, something like a concertina, I would call it. And the men were singing, they were all jovial. And I thought, yeah, that's the way to run an army. I said, I like these guys.
The Greeks built a fire down on the front lines there, and they were singing and making all kinds of noise, and And they do that to try to entice the Chinese to kind of come down and see what's going on, Well, then they would have their ambush patrol out, and they would capture them or take care of them, And I thought that was pretty clever. The Greeks were darn good soldiers. We loved them.
And we all got to love them very much because they were fierce fighters. They, I don't think, ever retreated.
I can remember looking out the trench door, and this one Greek, there's two chinks come in on him with just both bayonets. They both had bayonets on their rifles. But I tell you, friend, I was scared to death. And he just exploded.
If you're watching from Greece, you must be really proud hearing this, huh? You must be really proud watching this video, because like US, they always like pride themselves in being like the top in terms of warfare. So when you hear when you hear an American soldier saying how Greeks are so top notch, it's such a high praise. Huh?
Knocked the bayonet, the rifles out of their hands, and grabbed the little old guys by the necks and punched their heads together, and they were still the rest of the time then.
What I remember about them is they had no fear. They were the best bayonet people in the world, and after every time the bayonets were used, they would clean them, take all the blood off. And it was amazing because nobody else ever did that.
I was really impressed with their attitude. They were all brave men. One of the nights there, and one of the soldiers was slightly wounded in a small firefight, and the Greeks had a great celebration for him.
They were just happy-go-lucky. They were not really concerned. They were the toughest people I've seen.
When the Chinese attacked them, they would fix bayonets and meet them halfway down the hill. Consequently, it became known that whenever the Chinese were certain they were on line, they tended to avoid them. I wish we'd have had more of them on Outpost Harry. Maybe they would have avoided us.
Okay. Very interesting story. Very interesting descriptions. Wow. Oh Lord. Hey, let me just see something here. Oh man. They describe the Greek soldiers coming into their rescue. Is so nice. It makes me feel like a proud Greek man, and I'm not Greek. Anyway, I just want to Google more about Outpost Harry, and this war. Okay, was a remote Korean war outpost located on a tiny hilltop in what was commonly referred to as the Iron Triangle. Okay. Wow. Hey, this was back in 1953. Even my mom was not born in 1953. My mom was born in 1955. Ah. Anyway, I'll Google this later. Absolutely incredible story. If you enjoyed my reaction, make sure to smash like and subscribe. There's a video I did. I reacted to the Greek military. I'll leave it here. If you're a history buff, feel free. I mean, I'm terrible with history, especially like European history, war. Terrible. This is because we are not taught these things in school. So feel free to comment below and inform me more. And then I'll see you in the next one.